Being on a safari in Kenya offers a wide range of beautiful wild animals to discover. Lucky visitors will meet the famous Big Five, which are lion, rhino, elephant, buffalo and leopard. And of course zebras and giraffes. And usually they will also see a lot of antelopes. But there is one animal safari tourists will hardly ever meet out in the wild. The Mountain Bongo is a large, shy antelope endemic to Kenya's indigenous forests.
They're a sort of a mystery animal. They're a ghost of the woods. They're something very, very special to anyone whose heart is with the wildlife, and particularly the forests.
Must be the most handsome, beautiful antelope in the world.
But due to habitat destruction and hunting, the Mountain Bongo is on the brink of extinction, with just 103 remaining in the wild.
When we were boys, bongo were actually, they weren't a rare animal, they were quite common. There were a lot of them, were there not? I mean, really a lot.
The Mountain Bongo is now possibly the most endangered large land mammal south of the Sahara. The situation for bongo today is as grave as it was for black rhino and elephant in the late 80s. Recent population models predict bongo could be extinct in the wild in as little as 14 years. Kenya hosts the entire global population of 103 bongos in the wild, scattered in 4 completely isolated remnant groups in some highland forests on the east and the west sides of the Great Rift Valley.
And the eastern Aberdares has been best protected, and that's where the majority bongo are.
Aberdare National Park and Forest Reserve is a stronghold for bongos in the country with an estimated population of 50 individuals. Mau West Forest holds an estimated 30, Mount Kenya Forest about 15, whereas the Mau Eburu Forest contains 9 individuals.
So they're obviously pushed into little tiny corners where there's lots of food and water, and that's where they stay basically.
This is their chance of survival. I mean, if they weren't a retiring animal like this and very shy, there wouldn't be any left probably. Hunting had no effect on them. It was
poaching with dogs because they bay up very easily, so that's where a lot of them were killed. Predators have taken quite a lot, and possibly rinderpest.
The poaching's done, it's not like elephant poaching and rhino poaching where it's really done for financial gain. It's mainly a consumptive poaching.
But bushmeat, I mean, there's a big market for bushmeat.
But it doesn't matter because there's so few bongo now, you can't afford to lose one, whether it's for profit or whether it's just purely to eat. But the other factor is, of course, that the habitat of the bongo, the forests, the Mau forest has been almost totally devastated. And the Aberdares and Mount Kenya here are under pressure, and there are all sorts of people up in there illegally logging and poaching and so on. Kenya's got one of the fastest growing populations in the world. It doubles every 18, 19 years. Already there's pressure on the land. What's it going to be in 20 years' time when the population has doubled yet again?
I mean, when we were boys, the population was probably about 3 million people. I think by independence it was about 6 million, and it's now 45 million.
The Bongo Surveillance Programme, short BSP, is a local, community-based initiative that started in 2003. The BSP was originally formed to identify if any mountain bongo were remaining in the wild, as none had been seen for many years.
For quite some time, the bongo was actually thought to have been extinct in this region.
Yeah, what happened was that, we had a very good warden here, John Mahanga, and he said to me, "Do you think there are any bongo left here?" And I said, "I'm sure there probably are." And he said, "Would you be prepared to have a look-see?" And I said, "Yeah, why not?"
This was the beginning of the Bongo Surveillance Project.
So I got a few of these old people around, and they knew some youngsters who spent time in the forest, and so we got them in.
Intensive research estimated that there were still some bongos surviving. But as much illegal logging and poaching was discovered during extensive field trips, especially the need to conserve their forest habitat has become highly important. To reach this goal, it was vital to work closely with the communities and the nearby schools.
And there was that proposal coming from Michael President that they would like to be facilitated to engage the communities in activities that ultimately save the lives of the bongos. And that is how we came in to help to look for funds through the SHub.
There's no hope, really can tell you, without the local population, and the best way of getting at the locals is through their school kids.
That's why Mike founded the Bongo Wildlife Club, which now totals 9 schools. The wildlife clubs include conservation education through classroom presentations, films, and visits to national parks, as most pupils and teachers have never been to a park before. Further, the schools have planted nearly 3,000 indigenous trees. Through BSP support, new farming methods had been shown. The BSP has also introduced alternative cooking initiatives and new technologies to these communities.
Yes, partly what we do in these schools is educate them in other ways of cooking than using kuni, using sawdust or even elephant dung or gombe dung too, and solar.
These initiatives, founded by the BSP, have helped the local economy and made the schools more sustainable to finally release the surrounding forest ecosystems, the habitat of the Mountain Bongo. The BSP has demonstrated effectiveness in the field utilizing innovation and technology to provide detailed scientific research on the forest and the habitat of the Bongo.
We do not directly fund conservation research, but we support implementation of innovations that are coming from other researchers. But we also have, as an institution, an own interest in participating in this project because it targets one of the most critical components of conservation, and that is the bongo.
Usage of camera traps, GPS and advanced mapping have helped provide important information about the last remaining bongo.
The thing that's most interesting, he's got these cameras that you can put up over a salt lake, and which they know are regularly used by bongo. And it's a fantastic thing because it's on the alert 24 hours of the day. And Mike's done a lot of work on that, and I think it's most useful.
The Mount Kenya Wildlife Conservancy in Nanyuki, a private conservation initiative, is host to a group of bongos which were flown from zoos in the United States in 2004. Today more than 30 bongos were born in the orphanage. The aim is to reintroduce some of them into the natural range, but this is not as easy as it sounds. The remaining small bongo populations are in high danger of suffering from inbreed, as they live separated in different forests. Uncontrolled release of animals could rather jeopardize the existing groups. The Kenya National Bongo Conservation Task Force has therefore put on hold plans to reintroduce bongos into the wild. Research is now going even further. Genetic analysis of dung samples collected in the wild to confirm the numbers of animals and assessment of the genetic diversity of wild and captive populations.
I think once we know what the situation is on the DNA, luckily in Europe and America there are plenty of mountain bongo that are have got a full set of genes. So we will know what animals to put back. But as they say, there's no point in us keeping bongo in Europe if we're going to let them all die in the wild. There's no point.
The success of re-establishing the bongo depends upon the support and the commitment of the people of Kenya. They must ensure the protection and preservation of their environment.
Conservation cannot be a preserve of given few institutions in Kenya. And every effort, therefore, counts. Fortunately, the funding for the bongo conservation is coming from the ESAP. Fortunately, because within the ESAP, the possibility to build up into the previous initiative is always there, and especially if you are creating good impact.
So that finally pupils like these one day will get the chance to be as impressed as Mike and Tony were while observing mountain bongos in its natural habitat.
It's a subject one can go on and on and on talking about, especially people like Mike and myself who've had a lot to do with bongo over the years. But it's all rather esoteric conversation and wouldn't necessarily impress other people.